Right, it is 4:56. We have limited attendance for the Historic Commission tonight. We do not currently have quorum, so we will not be taking votes on any matters, but we do have some things to discuss initially, and we'll work through that business. We have in attendance, just for a brief roll, Elise Josephson is out. Jenna Fribley,
Present.
Charlotte Helmer is out. Kirkwood Donovan,
Present.
Taryn Wood,
Aye.
thank you. Slide that over. Celine Swinson Harris is running late. We will roll her in once arrived. And then, oh, missed it. Adam Howard is also not present. And we are down to commissioners. Christina has turned out, as we know, and Mason resigned a couple meetings ago as well. So we have 7 commissioners at the moment. And we do have calls out for new commissioners to join out in the public right now. So with that, we will get down to the agenda. There. All right, in review of the agenda, we have public comment coming up. Well, historic land use applications, there are none. And then we can get into reviewing the work plan. So with that, I have here Susan Colley, who, if I can share the screen. All right, so Susan is the owner of 890 Aspen Street. Seen here an overhead view, just off of, what is this, Kellogg and Aspen. And then seen here from street view, a beautiful historic structure. And she is interested in this possibly being added to the historic landmark inventory. And Susan, if you would like to add anything.
Yes, I've been at the house for 2 years. I got it 2 years ago. And it is on the historic registry, the National Registry. It is a very interesting property. It's known as the Robert E. Campbell House. It is on Google Maps, for one thing, as the Robert E. Campbell House. And Robert E. Campbell was a pioneer from Missouri who came across the plains in a wagon in the 1850s and purchased or got a donation land grant down to the river of 350 acres in 1852. And he lived on this property in a log cabin for 20 years, 2-room log cabin. And then he himself and his sons built the house in 1878 to 1873. And the house is much the same as it was in those days. I have a photograph of him in front of the house when he was living there. I don't know the exact date of that, but it looks very much the same, except for on the upper floor, there used to be a little porch that there's a door on the upstairs, and there used to be a porch there, and now it's roof.
This area, right?
Yeah, right up there. There's some old trees, as you can see, 2 huge fir trees in the front, an old magnolia tree, a white oak on the side of the house, a very old, huge walnut tree in the back, a willow, a curly willow that's beginning to having a hard time after the storm, but it survived. It has a lot of interesting architectural features, one of them being the chimney, which was apparently, they believe, built by the Reverend Charles Hamilton Wallace, a circuit rider from the Presbyterian Church. And he built the bricks himself from the property area. And there's a number of Masonic symbols on the chimney. Hearts and lozenges and stars. It is known as the Gothic Revival House. Victorian rural Gothic cottage style. It was on a 350-acre donation land grant. His family, the Campbell family, lived in the house. They married into the Anderson family, and the house was occupied by Campbells and Andersons until about 1980. It was sold at that time. I think I'm the fourth person to live in the house, to own the house. It has a lot of original wainscoting and some the old fir floors in many of the rooms. It has the windows are very deep. Doors are very deep as well. They have a deep silled door and window frames, hand hewn. I have a book that was put, Style and Vernacular, Lane County, Oregon. It is from the some sort of architectural society. And the house is on page 97, looking very much like this photo here. I also have the National Registry plaque. Yeah, you can see that. And this was from 1979, or yeah, 1979. It was awarded that designation. So I would think it'd be a very nice addition to your historic sites. So, any questions? Or-
Yeah, we can have feedback now.
Yeah, and it's already shown also on the Springfield Historic Resources map.
Okay, great.
Just in being called out as a nationally listed site, not as a locally listed site. But just FYI. On there. I guess. It is very worthy, of course. One thing that is often a consideration, a local listing of a site, well, it's great because it really protects the site. It also means that if you need to do alterations in the future, or like window repair, replacement, you'll have to have those applications reviewed through the Historic Commission. So it adds another level kind of oversight, which is partially the purpose of getting it listed, is that you're basically protecting it in perpetuity. So that, a future owner, for example, couldn't be like, I'm just gonna put vinyl windows in it now, like this isn't important to me.
Well, the previous owner was very concerned with this, Marilyn Lynch, and she went to a lot of effort to maintain much of the historic original.
That's great.
Yeah, beautiful chandeliers inside the original old historic staircase to the very narrow.
Tiny and steep.
Tiny feet.
Yeah, it's just something to be aware of.
Yes,
Mostly,
right.
that it means that it'll
aware
add
of that,
another
yeah.
layer of review. But certainly the great thing about local listing is it actually protects the building, whereas being on the National Register actually has no legal binding. So
Oh, I didn't really realize that.
so the National Register is a great recognition, basically. But the only real repercussion for altering the house outside of kind of the guidelines is a slap on the hand and a removal of that plaque. Like there's no legal protection for the building, whereas when it's on the local listing, local inventory, it does actually protect it because now it's subject to review by the Historic Commission.
Yeah, it should be really inventory too, as for what is original there that needs to be kept, like some of the original glass and kind of stuff. Yeah. Okay.
Anyone else online? Any further comment?
I would like to chime in and say that I read that book that you mentioned, Style and Vernacular, and I appreciate the historical research that you put into the listing instead of just,
I have not done much yet. I'm really wanting to do that.
well,
Hoping
it's,
to be inspired and,
I appreciate that
At the
you
museum.
at least surveyed some literature.
yeah.
It's, it is definitely historically worthy, I feel like, as well.
Do you know,
Thank
I
you.
honestly am not familiar with the actual listing process. Are you? Like, I don't have that
I
in front
have
of me. I
it
didn't bring
pulled
them.
up right here.
Yeah.
So we have section 3.3920 of the code, establishment of the historic landmark inventory. So there is an application process that we can go through, and I believe, so the following criteria shall be considered by the historical commission or planning commission in establishing sites or structures on historic landmark inventory. So we would be able to go through an application process, and I would have to see, because this says historical commission or planning commission, if we would make a recommendation to the planning commission as far as placing this in that inventory would be the likely route.
Yeah.
I can look more into it and I'll follow up with you, Susan, about that.
Okay,
About any next steps
great.
to go down this path.
Yeah, like I assume there must be a form or something, right?
Oh, yeah. There always is.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you
Yes,
for your help.
You're very
Thank you.
Yeah,
Okay,
well, it'll be fun it'll be a fun.
yeah.
Yeah, we don't
Okay.
get many of those.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
And congratulations on having a really cool house. Yeah.
So that was our public comment and business from the audience. We finally had some, so good job, everyone.
The public cares about history.
Yep.
So we currently do not have any new land use applications. The last one that we discussed December 5th was the High Stand ADU at 845 5th Street. That recommendation I did receive from Shannon Sardell. So I've got everything I needed for that. Minor alteration to the rear master bedroom to add a 4.5 foot extension for a bathroom because they're converting the master bedroom to an internal ADU space. So that's pretty much all taken care of at this point. I am just waiting on Fire's comment as Gilbert just made it back into the office this week. So hopefully I'll get that and that can be out the door. But everything looks good with that. And so we review work plan. Charlotte's not here. I'm not sure any other educational opportunities that might be out there at this time. And walking tour guides. Celine was going to be about 30 minutes late. We are about 39 minutes past our start time. So we can go ahead and move past that. And between the three commissioners here and me as liaison, we can discuss the work plan and upcoming grant cycle. And if anyone else arrives, we can go ahead and weave them in. This recording can serve as a resource for them to catch up on anything that we've discussed. But other than that, the floor is open. I know there were a few things that Christina teed up upon her departure as far as visioning for the work plan. And yeah, this is the time to see what all we want to get done this year. I know for one, we have phase 2 of the Washburn survey. We'll utilize, I'm guessing, the same company since we already drew bids for that. They'll just complete the other part of work, I'm guessing, for that phase. So outside of the Washburn RLS phase 2, what do we want to do?
I wonder, just, kind of, this is off topic, but it's on topic, but it's off topic. Is in response to the ice apocalypse. Obviously, there's been a lot of damage in the district.
Yep.
And two things are gonna happen. Well, one thing is gonna happen. But a different thing probably technically should happen in that some of those repairs are probably supposed to be submitted for like broken windows and stuff are supposed to be submitted for us. They're just gonna get replaced with whatever or repaired like people are just desperate, like not even thinking about it. Like
Yeah.
it's cold, I don't have power, my window's broken, it needs to be repaired. Who can repair it right now, right?
Right, right.
So do we need to be thinking about a communication plan, a little bit of like some sort of outreach to the neighborhood to be like, hey, don't forget,
Mhm.
we know this is really hard, hello, howdy. Like some sort of communication. I was just saying, basically in response to the chaos that just happened with the ice, that there's probably going to be a lot of repairs needing to happen in the Washburn district, and that people aren't really thinking that maybe top of mind isn't to like go talk to the historic commission about what they're allowed to put in that window hole that broke, they're just like desperate to get the window fixed. Do we need to do some sort of outreach to communicate around that, of like a reminder to that, they can't just put a vinyl window in the hole or whatever, and that theoretically they're supposed to go through a process with us, but also would there be any way we could get some sort of fast track review process or something for just those repairs and, as a response to the ice apocalypse?
Yeah, so internally, that was something we were discussing last week as far as what city processes, historic commission or historic applications, tree felling applications, a lot of stuff came down, obviously. How we can waive certain things, but make sure we still capture critical information. The historic commission, I walked about 80% of it and I saw a lot of, well, not a lot, but the main damage I saw was gutters that were torn off. I didn't see any trees that came through roofs, and I didn't see any broken windows. Not saying they're not out there though. That would be my biggest concern, because in the guidelines, replacement windows have to be reviewed by us.
Right.
But if you refurbish or something like that, then there's no requirement for that. So because these are issues of repair, we can streamline it, I think, by requiring photos, as we typically already do, and assessing, is this a repair or is this now you're trying to tail in some further development along with that? That was kind of my initial concern, is this isn't a free-for-all to just go and do whatever you want now. But we do want to have oversight, like windows. I haven't received any calls, and I'm not sure, because it is more or less self-reporting at this point, how we would capture that. So if I get contacted, I can relay this information. We can also put it up on the website about, hey, just disclaimer, just notice that any historic assets, or if you're in the Washburn or have one of the few landmark sites outside of the Washburn that have been damaged, contact us specifically, directly, me as liaison, and then we can go from there. If people are having like catastrophic issues, like whole side of your wall came down from a tree and you're now cold, that's a whole other issue. But if we're talking a broken window or minor things, then we can take not as like cut and dry, like, yeah, just go ahead and repair it, but we can have a little bit of oversight with that, is our discussion so far.
Like, I wonder, would it be worth trying to do a quick letter, a mailing to the district? Like, we have a mailing list, we've done it with the postcards. Could we just like send a letter to everyone in the district, like just sort of a reminder that,
Yeah.
hey, don't forget, any major kind of things need to come through us, and we're working, we'll work as hard as we can to expedite that review, or just, kind of reinforcing, like, don't forget you're in a really important house, and like stewardship is really important, and like, please feel free to reach out to us if you needed, like, I don't know, some sort of like input on what's the appropriate way to repair this or something, right? Like,
Yeah.
just sort of a little bit of outreach, just to gently remind to be mindful.
This isn't a reason not to do it, but I know we have limited resources
know.
too, as far as historic repair.
Yeah.
Yeah. But good point, yeah.
I
And,
think, and I don't know how long we wanna,
oh.
oh,
go ahead.
I don't know how long we wanna wait on this. I know the picture around, resources that may be available to homeowners to seek assistance with repairs or removal is still, somewhat evolving.
Mhm.
But I think it would be really good, depending on if the timeline works out, if we are gonna do a mailing like that, to also include any resources we do know of that might be able to help people.
Or if there's a place where we know that those resources are being like there's a repository for them
Yeah.
linking to that, because if the list itself is changing constantly, then it's hard to like capture it in a hard document, but it was just like go to this dump spot on our website that we're putting all of these on a regular basis or something. It's tricky with the city, like if it's a private company or something, like we can't really, I don't think, include those things, right? Like,
I mean, in terms of, there is, I don't have a full understanding of what is going to come forward, but there may be assistance available to people.
yeah, so maybe it's just like reach out to Tom.
Yeah. Yeah.
Bomb Tom's email.
We'll go from there.
Yeah.
Well, we do have the historic commission.
Yeah, well,
uh,
that's true, yeah.
Yeah, our little page and email address, that is linked to my email.
Yeah.
Instead of me getting it directly, I still get it directly just under historic commission.
Yeah, or could it just check the historic commission page and we could plop a quick like
Yeah,
little at the top,
Yeah.
like, information about, this, and then initially, if we don't have anything to link there, we can at least link that letter to that spot or something, and then,
yeah, like City of Springfield website currently has, well, yeah, the ice storm
Yeah.
across the top, click for resources, Springfield alerts, so I don't know if we can lump anything into that, because that might be more for emergency needs, but for sure on our historic commission page that we have, I think that would be good.
But
Yeah,
I think if we're gonna do it, it needs to like get sent out this week, or it's not gonna be timely, right?
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm
But
all
you're-
for public outreach. However, I'm hesitant to put any red tape in front of somebody trying to repair their window. Um, I know there was a statement earlier about that being a minor thing, but if somebody isn't able to maintain the temperature in their house, that's kind of a critical matter,
Yeah.
Although I'm happy to like give resources to people and tell them, hey, once you get this patched up, maybe you should come talk to us before doing any repairs that are significant,
It needs to be a friendly letter, but also a
Yeah.
little reminder, because like, also, once there's a vinyl window in that hole, it's a vinyl window forever,
Mm,
you know?
mhm.
Is there, in terms of sort of the ability to take temporary and quick action to, for example, make sure you're able to keep your home at a safe temperature, how do we interact with that?
That's a good question. And I don't have an answer. I don't know. We talked about like the self-reporting, but we can get around that by sending a letter. But again, like I haven't received any calls, like I don't know if anybody out there has this issue.
Yeah. that's fair.
So
And
I
if it's,
don't-
yeah.
yeah, I don't think we want to make any pointed, like, for broken windows, do this, like, whatever your problems are
Yeah,
that
let's just-
have with a historic structure, just contact us and we'll, case by case basis, work it out from there. I think if anybody is having that issue at this point, this many days on from that, they've either plugged it up or taken
Mhm.
care of it one way or another, or they're not damaged, but I don't want to make these assumptions, just,
I mean, a
so.
couple of pieces of cardboard are just as insulating as a window, so. Like in terms of mediating the immediate cold,
Right.
but yeah, at this point now it's 50 degrees out anyways.
Yeah, but we should, I think the outreach is gonna be our best bet, just to get word out. And then whatever comes back with that, we'll deal with.
Sounds like a plan to me.
It doesn't even have to talk about red tape specifically, just like, hey, we hope your, historic home wasn't, too severely damaged. We just wanna, reach out to, offer that if you have any questions about your repairs, that you are stewards of this house and, you need to be mindful as you're doing these repairs. And if you have any questions, please reach out to the Historic Commission liaison, Tom.
Yeah, that's fine. Who keeps the list or who has the Washburn mailing list?
I can look in my emails from like it was somebody in the department over here, like.
Okay. Oh,
You
staff
all have it.
somewhere. Okay, okay. Yeah, because I mean, we can, draw the shape around it and everyone within that, we can, I think, pull an address like we do for all of our other public notices.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if we just had a concise list
You
already,
might
which
already,
probably changed,
yeah.
but, okay, I can look into that. Do we want to have any commissioners draft that, or do we want me to do it?
I mean, if you have time to do it, that'd be
Yeah,
great, but
okay.
if you don't have
I
time.
just, yeah, cause I can word it in a way that, like what we're discussing
Yeah.
to just some general, if you have questions and kind of putting the impetus on the owner that you are a steward of this, please contact us if you have any repair questions or needs or resources.
Yeah.
We can provide guidance. Cool. All right, I will work on that this week and get it out at Friday by the latest. Cool. So that was your on topic, off topic.
Yes.
Okay, we have Charlotte just emailed. Charlotte is unable to join, but we do have 4 commissioners out of our 7, so if we need to take action on anything, we do have quorum at least tonight. If we need to have follow-up meetings like we have done in the past for the awards program or anything like that, I can schedule another meeting next week or 2 weeks out or whatever we need to do. But the work plan is going to be very important to get the grant applied for. I don't know if we have a working document yet, or if Christina had provided anything as far as work plan. I can pull
I'm sure she
like
had a
our
draft of it.
old, okay, yeah, and I'll reach out to her.
And I think Elise has something.
Okay. Very good.
I don't also have that though.
Okay. Gotcha. And yeah, just given her scheduling and stuff like that, we might want to have just a midweek or next week kind of meeting to follow up on this. And we can give as much time to it as needed, just depending on the day and everyone's availability. And as long as we have 4 commissioners, we can vote on that and finalize it. But we are at 5:24 currently. We can keep discussing the work plan and any other topics to try to include on that. Again, we had the RLS phase 1 was 1/2 of the Washburn that was surveyed. We do need to do phase 2. That would be the second half. I think that would be pretty straightforward since we had already collected bids for phase 1. I don't think we need to do that again for phase 2 because we're gonna be sticking with the same company that did it for us for phase 1. So I think that is a hard project on the books right now. And then anything else, I don't know if there's, what's the other one? The RLS, the ILS. Is there any specific resources in mind? Like we did the Gray House, and I think that was a very good, project for a specific ILS. Anything off the top of our heads that we might want to apply that to in this round, or maybe we don't need an ILS? And like the school admin building, I know is changing, right? That's.
Well, we already did one
gonna turn
privately.
into That, okay, yeah,
We
so
already paid for that.
like that's taken care of, any other resources that you might come up with. We can keep an email chain going or something like that for ILS topics to try to include. I know we had also talked about possibly creating a heritage tree, historic tree. I'm totally. on board
Heritage
with that.
landscape and or cultural site medallion program.
Yeah, yeah, so getting something like that going. I'm assuming the awards program is coming back this year for our structures, but if we want to, I think trees and or landscape should be separate from that, but that's up to you guys to decide. I'm just liaison, but
Or like medallions.
yeah, separate from the historic and project-based stuff and like something
So like
different,
I
or
guess-
do you want to lump it all together?
the awards is separate from what I was thinking of a landscape medallion
Okay,
program.
okay.
Like those aren't necessarily like the awards program, yes, the award is a medallion, but that's different from like, that's just like that's like a component. It's different than just like a physical recognition of place,
Gotcha.
like. So that medallion though can be like, just the text is changeable, right? So you can have it be landscape,
Yeah.
tree, whatever, like historic site. And then they could be like, adhered to the concrete curb or put on a little post or something
Yeah.
in front of things. And that's what I was thinking for like a tree or landscape program, a historic rhododendron, and like have it
Yeah.
there or.
What do you envision the process around identifying those trees?
So we have talked about for years doing a survey of the neighborhood for landscape objects, like a landscape survey, and we haven't done that. So that's sort of, I don't know that fits in this year's grant cycle, but that would be something to consider. Otherwise, I would say we at least, I don't know that you're gonna do them all at once anyways, right? So it might just be literally just going around and cherry picking a few and putting couple medallion. We can afford to do 5 medallions a year or whatever, glue them to the sidewalk and call it good.
5 medallions a year.
So I don't know that it has to be like a lengthy selection process necessarily, at least not at first, unless it's not intended to be a competitive process. That isn't, it's just like recognizing big, cool, old things. And maybe we just come up with some parameters. If we have an arborist tell us that a tree is probably over a certain age, then it could be eligible, and we're just trying to pick ones that are the most visible or along a walking route or something, right? At least initially. And then for buildings, like, obviously there are ones that are awarded through the awards program, but like, I think separate from that, we could do medallions that are just to recognize like the city inventory and historic, places, like we can make ones that
Yeah.
just literally fasten to the facade and as a landmark identifier.
Yeah.
So that is definitely on my bucket list of a future program, whether we want to tackle it with this grant cycle or not. I won't be offended if we don't, but it would be really cool. But I also have not brainstormed the exact procedure for like attaching it to the world physically.
Yeah,
I think the piece that I would want to understand in terms of thinking about including this in a grant cycle is, I would presume that we would want somebody who is a tree expert is not the word I'm looking for, but a tree expert.
We do have, there's that guy that gives all the walking
Arborist.
tours.
yeah, certified arborist.
Yeah, and I'm assuming we would probably, and depending on how much work we're trying to do, want to, think about what it would cost to compensate them for that.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up, because projects are one thing, but all associated costs for every part of it that would incur a cost. We also need to consider. We can have like earmarked fund, if education and outreach, how we had, a set amount of money, and then we figure out, okay, Dr. David Lewis or anybody else that we want to come have as speakers, We don't necessarily need to have that figured out now. We just need to know how those funds are gonna be allocated. So.
Yeah, the medallions would definitely be an education piece, right?
Sure.
Like it's public education.
Yeah.
There's the guy that does the tree tours. His name's Whitey. And he does walking tree tours. And, he did some in Springfield, he does some on campus, all around Eugene.
Nice.
And he might be a good person to reach out to. Also, the city might just like, we used to be a designated Tree City USA and we're not anymore.
We're working.
Yeah, so I don't know if the city, the city has some tree people.
We just hired someone in the environmental side that is certified or used to be certified, and then like our operations division, Ben Gibson might be a good person to talk to because they're involved with all the street trees, which could be historic,
Yeah,
but
maybe
I don't
not.
think we're gonna award ourselves.
Well, it's
But
not an award though. The tree thing isn't an award. It's just
Yeah, okay, yeah.
recognize, like identifying.
recognition, yeah. So it'd mainly be private property owners. And that's where, in bringing back Tree City USA, we at least have to have an inventory of our public trees. In looking at tree preservation, though, that doesn't extend to private property. And if we're wanting to have an urban canopy, we can't just be looking at public trees. We need to be looking at all the trees. So we would need to expand our code to have preservation, because right now it's tree felling permits, which doesn't necessarily include preservation standards, tree protection during construction, or anything that would go into saving trees because it's geared towards felling trees and largely felling of, like stands of firs and stuff. It's not looking at old, white oaks in town. It's just felling, and it's only for more than 5 trees.
Mm.
There could be a historic tree,
Mhm.
and if that's only one you need to take down, you don't even have to notify us right now or get a permit or anything else. You just hire someone to cut it down and it's cut down, and we never know what we had and what we lost. So that's why I'm pushing to expand that to private trees as well. But I mean, this timeline, we're talking 2026 to 2029 even for
And-
full implementation.
What about trees in the Washburn district? Is there any, I don't remember, is there any like more?
That's another layer to it,
Yeah.
where if we had private preservation standards, that would all be included.
So in the work plan, do we need to include money to allocate or some, like, somebody to consult with us about code revision or design standard revision in the Washburn around landscape?
I've had some initial discussions. There is grant money out there separately from what we can apply for through the SHPO grant. How that is done, I don't know yet, but that is part of our discussions of getting assistance from even like the Oregon chapter of the ISA, the International Society of Arboriculture, can have resources for implementing code changes, like specifically. So that's something that we're looking into right now. But we're just at the early talks of it all, just with our staff, let alone expanding that out to other agencies. But we are looking at it.
Do we envision that this would include, similar to our guidelines around houses, a specific set of historic landscape and tree guidelines, or are we envisioning it more as, it sounds like the city is already at some point going to be doing code amendments around tree preservation in general?
I think tree preservation in general will capture it. The part that I don't think it would capture is landscape.
Like an
where-
ancient rhododendron,
Right,
like,
right.
that's what I keep picturing.
Yeah. So that's where, at least for our purposes with historic landscaping, we would be at a loss. Or not have anything to cover there, at least.
Do we have historic rhododendrons? Just out of
Probably.
curiosity there.
I mean, definitely some of the plantings at some of the older homes, like I'm not a landscape architect, I can't really tell you, but there's some really big rhododendrons that, you know, around I'm picturing like maybe at the old Berg house, he had a lot of really nice landscaping, but I don't know how old those were. But I'm sure there are some like previously when we have had landscape architects on this board, there have been mentions of historic plantings and I certainly wouldn't be surprised, or like a, you know, is there like a heritage rose on somebody's property or like, you know, I don't know. That's why we need a survey.
And that's really fine grain, and we would need some kind of landscape expert, because it's one thing to try to determine tree age, but like a rhododendron, I have no idea, or a rose bush. I don't know how you determine those things.
And I
but-
don't know that we necessarily even want to police it, right? That's the other thing,
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
but somehow it feels important to capture it and at least encourage stewardship around it, right?
Mhm.
And that's where it's, I guess, I don't know what the message is exactly, or what the action is that we want to take or we need to take, but just somehow.
And like our appearance to the community, because we already get comments of, you're making me do all of this for this house, and mostly by people that are speculating on a house.
Yeah.
They're not a long-term Springfieldian in a historic home, but they're just, you know, wanting to update the home and sell it. We get pushback on, you know, as you would imagine, a historic
Mhm.
district would get with, oh, I can't change this, I can't change that without asking you. And there's that, but then there's landscaping where there's oversight over my landscaping now. So the whole policing, and we certainly don't have resources for enforcement of any policing.
But if we were able to identify some cool plants around the neighborhood and put a medallion out on the sidewalk, be like, this is 100-year-old, whatever, you know, cool thing that Johnny brought over from wherever in his grandma's garden on the East Coast and planted here, and like, how neat is that? And here's a medallion that recognizes it, like, that encourages stewardship, it's a great selling point for somebody selling the house, like, that adds
Yep.
value. Like, historic plantings are really important to people buying historic homes. And it's just a matter of how do you identify that, and then how do we justify putting a medallion in front of one plant versus another plant or whatever, what is
Yeah.
that process, right? Like, yeah.
And I think recognition and encouragement is I think both in terms of our capacity, it seems much more feasible. It
Yeah.
also seems much better.
Culturally.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for folks who are trying to do the right thing
Yeah.
and care for their historic homes and landscapes.
Totally.
Um,
And you can always move the medallion if it's not site specific, if it just says a heritage plant on the medallion, like, and then they cut down the rhododendron or it dies, like, you can just peel it up and stick it somewhere else.
well, we're definitely in a moment where the vulnerability of trees, I think, is
Yeah.
very top of mind.
Yeah.
Do we want to try to put some first steps on this into our work plan?
Potentially. I guess the question is, what is the first step?
Yeah.
Is the first step? I think probably the first step is having a survey done of landscape in the Washburn district. And that's a thing we have talked about doing for a long time. And it just, if nothing else is done with it, it's really a great way to capture this point in time. And 50 years from now, like, you can look back at it and at least we've captured it, and it's interesting for sort of the longevity of like documenting the neighborhood. And ideally, it'll be useful in helping us implement one of these other programs as well. And it's not creating any rules or like telling people they can or can't do anything. It's just like, right now, we have these landscape assets around the neighborhood, and you know, that survey would be done, we'd be paying for it, it'd be performed by somebody who knows what plants or what and can at least roughly identify unique characteristics or age or whatever.
Do we know how landscaping surveys are typically done? Cause I know like with the RLS of the Washburn, it was just walking.
Yeah, I think,
In the public right of way, no door knocking or bothering people or anything like that, and this would substantially go beyond that, going into people's
it'd
yards.
be probably just front yards,
Stuff
most
like that,
likely, I would
okay.
assume either alleys and front yards.
Cause I
right?
guess it's the front facing.
Or if there's a
that-
big old tree behind it, you can
Yeah.
probably see the tree.
Yeah, and a tree survey, I mean, just differentiating from landscape. You know, you wanna know the size, you wanna know the species.
Yeah, I don't know, it's something that is not my expertise.
Okay.
But we should definitely look into, I don't know if we can ask Christina, like, even so she's not, but like, she probably does.
She's a resource.
She's a resource. But that
Okay.
has definitely been something on our to-do list now for multiple years, so
Gotcha.
if it fits, it'd be amazing. I just don't know how expensive it is either.
So last year, or this past cycle that we completed was my first entire year and cycle with the commission, and it sounded like there was a lot that got done, and like, that's awesome. I don't, like, yeah, I think this is so far, I mean, I don't think we've fully discussed everything that can be done in the cycle, but as far as having some target items, I think that's good so far. We already know how we're going to approach and finish the RLS for Washburn, so there's not a whole lot of thought that needs to go into that. We just need to schedule up the company again to come and do it. Education and outreach is kind of an evolving thing that we hit throughout the year when we get speakers or anything else that we want to educate and outreach about. So again, just having funds allocated for that and then figuring out what it is we're going to do with those funds throughout the year. So having tree, landscape, or otherwise kind of survey, I think would be a good item, new item, let's say. Especially if it's been talked about for years now, let's try to tackle that one. And get some kind of recognition program going for that. And again, if it's medallions too, you said it's just changing out a couple letters, we already know pretty much what the cost
Yeah.
is on those.
I actually pre-designed them all already.
Oh.
The other interesting spin-off then from that is once you have like long game plan, survey. Then either concurrent or staggered medallions and or walking tour guide of landscape, right?
Publication, color pictures.
During the blossoming
During
season.
the height of the season.
If we're already, I have to admit, I have not made much progress on the tour,
okay.
but since we're already putting together a
Yeah.
tour, and we could
Yeah.
also think about, is this something that logically folds in?
Yeah, we could,
Um,
yeah, like here's a cool house and here's a cool plant.
yeah.
Yeah.
Could do. We can have a little like house icon and then a little like sprig with a leaf icon or something. Or a green dot.
Sort of landscaping too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Just, actionable items, things that we can tackle, even if they're challenging, like the RLS was. I think once we got that figured out and had the timeline down, it was just a matter of them getting there and performing the work and
Yeah.
reporting on it.
Yeah, things that are heavy lift for other people are great tasks to put on here.
Yeah.
Like, let's give you money and you do the thing. Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, so I guess I feel like we just need to probably start by just quickly picking Christina's brain and be like, hey, did you have sort of ideas and knowledge about this, or do we need to research it, Because I feel like she already has, like, she is a landscape architect and this was on our list for a while, and I think she might have done a little research about it, so.
It might be a little more formed than
Yeah,
we think
then
right
it's
now.
just starting from scratch on who would do it and how it's done and what that process looks like.
That'd be great. Okay,
Is that something, do you want me to ask her about it, or do you want to ask her about it, or?
I can reach out to her, yeah. Make a quote.
Sounds good.
I'm happy to be the, you know, long-term point person for tree medallions, I'm just saying, so if that ties into that.
Sounds like that's already the case.
A little.
If we are talking, I don't know if this would go in the same bucket. I hate to admit I'm pretty ignorant about how specific we have to be with our grant application. If we were talking about trying to do tree medallions, I don't know if it would be in this grant or a future grant. Would we then include that with our sort of awards medallion?
I think it's different from that. I think we would just, it would be a outreach and education program.
Okay.
We could just say sort of like, we could probably generically, if we want to try to include anything around it, we could say, you know, tree survey. And then we could say, like some sort of outreach and education around the tree survey findings or whatever, and then that could transform into either a walking tour guide or medallions or whatever. Like, I don't think it has to be super specific, and or we can also shuffle things if we need to in buckets later.
We did send notice, like for the RLS and the Washburn, just a mailer. Hey, if you see people walking around looking at your house, here's why.
Yeah.
So once we know, I guess we would have to bid it out for all city
Mhm.
fairness sake, and then decide on, you know, that. And then find out from them how they conduct business, how they would be accessing properties. We can send out a mailer even if they do it too for their own notification needs, but just as the city, we would notify our residents that, hey, here's what's going on. But that's just from my end of it, knowing how the RLS went. And I didn't get any calls or anything luckily about that, so I guess the notice worked. But we would definitely approach it, I think, in the same way.
Especially once we actually know what they have to do. If they do need to
What it
like try to
entails.
go into the yard to measure a tree or something, like it may even be more mailers, like do you grant access or, you know, something like
Yeah.
if you don't grant access, let us know, or, you know, we'll be in your block this specific kind of week or date or something, and then, yeah.
So that, if, it'd be one thing if we already had an idea like we already do our current awards program of who we might want to reach out to or who we might hear from. And as far as inquiries go and application to receiving award and or recognition. But this is starting at the very beginning of that.
Yeah, I don't feel like this is the same process. It's really just like identifying an important site and putting sticking a medallion there,
Yeah.
getting permission to stick the medallion there if we need to, but like,
Okay.
oh, you have a big cool tree. Do you mind if we stick a medallion on the sidewalk? Great, and put it in the walking tour guide, like. I don't think it needs to be a like, we're not asking for nominations for these
Right,
things,
right.
like. It's
Or mayor being involved.
It's
or
not a
anything like
selection
that.
process in
Yeah.
that way. It's not like a juried awards. It's really, it's not like it's not an award. It's just, it exists. Or and for like cultural or historic sites, you know, like the spring location, you know, is a historic site. Like I want to stick a medallion there somewhere, right? Like, just kind of identifying some of those spots. I think there used to be a crazy like walnut tree, like where there was a big kerfuffle when they put in the second bridge in the 50s and like it stayed intact for a long time and you like drove around it and it was all weird. Like that could be an interesting storytelling spot, right? But just, I don't know.
Yeah.
I think we're also gonna have to figure out, this is a long way in the future,
Mhm.
but how we actually affix the medallions, because I assume we're not gonna go out and super glue them to a tree or the sidewalk.
Maybe the sidewalk. I
We
mean,
could.
like a lot of them are like when you like a lot of those like little brass buttons, like the ones that say like
Yeah.
drain to stream, right? The ones with the fishes, like I mean, they're just
Yeah.
stuck to the sidewalk.
No,
But-
there's a process
Yeah,
where we
there
ask the city first,
Yeah,
I'm sure.
yeah. And ideally, you kind of grind out a little
Yeah.
spot so it recesses,
Right.
otherwise like they're really vulnerable to prying off. But yeah, maybe it's like yeah, we'll just have to play with it, like whether they are mounted to something or they're just glued to the sidewalk.
Yeah.
I took some pictures of some in Ohio that were really cool, or no, maybe they're in California, where they did this, like, their walking tour route has them like little breadcrumbs around the route, which is really cool. Yeah. And they actually had them in English and Spanish. So as you're walking around, like every other one would be English or Spanish. I can put together some imagery for us all to like consider for the future.
And this would raise costs, but even like monument stone that
Yeah,
it sunk
maybe.
into and then that sunk into the, ground at the
Right.
tree or
Yeah.
something, but.
Yeah.
that
Yeah,
would
like a little
increase
concrete
costs,
block
yeah,
or something, yeah.
Hmm.
Or like a ribbon out of something uncuttable, you know?
Around the tree.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good new item.
Mhm. I think the survey is really the key thing there. The medallions is probably farther out realistically. Like, it's gonna take us probably the whole time to get the RLS for the buildings and then coordinate this landscape thing and actually get it executed and all of that, so.
Oh, RLS, is the R
Reconnaissance.
reconnaissance, that's right, reconnaissance level. Okay. Could this survey, would that be considered
I think it is, yeah.
under RLS? So we would have an allocation for RLS Washburn and then RLS landscaping and trees.
In the Washburn,
Yeah,
mostly probably.
just so because part of those funds, which may be in the next grant cycle for the medallions, would be under education and outreach, but the actual survey itself would be under an RLS
Yeah.
title
I think so.
and cost allocation. Okay, because we would need to ask more for two different RLSs
Mhm.
rather than have that separate as some other survey that we would do, but it
Yeah.
would be a reconnaissance. I mean, that's reconnaissance.
Yeah, I think it is. I don't know if there's different designations for landscape versus buildings, but
Okay.
I think it's similar.
Okay. That's a good item.
And I think we'll have to end up breaking it into chunks too, probably. Like, it'd probably be focusing on, this portion and then in the next grant cycle.
Yeah,
Expanding that.
Phase
further.
it.
Unless we want to unless we know of very specific locations in town that we wanted to try to capture or something in addition to that.
And again, it would have to be during the growing season or, height of the season to know.
I don't know, I don't know for the
Maybe not
survey,
for trees, but
maybe for.
I mean, rhododendrons are,
Yeah.
a historic rhododendron would already be big. It doesn't matter whether it's blooming or not.
Yeah, it'd be
but
nice to know what color it is, but probably for the record.
Photo purposes, yeah, we might want to have that instead of waiting until the next season to then go hit all the things that were already surveyed but not
Mhm.
photographed because it wasn't an ideal time of year, so. That could be something on the horizon coming up this summer that we might want to already
Mhm.
start tackling.
It would also be really interesting, honestly, to do a or do some sort of outreach. Or even just talk to the neighborhood about, like, tell them that we're interested in knowing what cool heritage and historic plantings are still intact in the Washburn. And if you have a cool, if you know a story about a plant or that you have a really old plant, to reach out to us, or like have some way that they could even like a Survey Monkey link, they could like
Yeah,
just describe what they have and where it's located, and then we could start to have a little bit of a, kind of crowdsourced data.
yeah, that focuses it more rather than having this open, we need to do a survey and then the company tries, you gotta hit every house. Oh, you don't have anything? Okay, to the next one. Oh, you
We
don't
still
have
might do
anything.
that, but it would just be an interesting data gathering
Yeah.
process. And there's a plant sale on the Washburn every year. Like, there's some total plant nerds in there. So I feel like if we could capture those people.
A self-report.
Can we go to that with like a QR code?
Yeah, exactly.
That'd be great.
I think Patty Sage, I think she helps with that plant sale and lives in the district. She's on our museum committee and is very active. And she might have even helped start the plant sale. So, she would have lots of gossip about the plants, at least in the neighborhood, and then like would also probably know who to talk to and try to like, you know, facilitate an informal survey.
Awesome, all right. Well, we are down to 4 minutes. I think despite our late start, this has been a productive talk, because I think some of the other items for the grant ask are kind of worked out. I mean, like I said, the education and outreach is a slush fund, and the RLS, at least of the Washburn, is more or less figured out. We have general idea of costs and what we would need to be asking for that. Whether or not we need to expand that into this, we can have our future discussions on.
You know what else we could add if we wanted to add money? Expenses. We could add hiring a photographer to go around and take pictures for the walking tour guide.
Yeah.
Like, yes, we
Would
can do it on
that-
our phone, but like.
Yeah, would that go in the education outreach?
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think so.
Okay.
But we've got a local photographer right here. He lives in that building behind the
Yeah.
depot. Like, I've been using him a lot recently. He's right here.
We definitely will need new photos.
Yeah.
And I hope we can make significant progress, if not finish this.
Yeah.
This time, so I think that makes sense, yeah.
Well, and because we have a defined list of sites, even if we decide to add some or change some, we can at least start with the list we have and get those photographed, right? And then, you know, and especially as it gets to be spring, it'd be really nice to get it done while it's like amping up to nice photograph season instead of waiting till winter. And then we could always add a few more if we need to along the way.
Cool. People online and everyone in here, does it sound good to schedule a meeting next week at some point? To get as many of us together again as we can, Elise included being chair, to make some further talk and or
What is our
get some stuff
deadline?
on paper. February 24th is the grant application deadline. If we have the work plan together, I think I would have everything I need in the work plan to complete the application. I'm still looking through all that. I don't want to click too far without submitting anything that doesn't exist or isn't there, but I've been, like I said, familiarizing myself with what that process is going to look like. And I think it's largely based on, obviously, the work plan we put together and what we're asking for is what's going to go into that application. Anyone else that was involved with Melissa or has knowledge of how this was done in the past, I'm open to suggestions. So. And for Celine, we did have public comment. We had someone that came in, Susan Colley, at, was it 890 Aspen Street. She is interested in getting her property. It's already on the National Registry, but she is interested in getting it on the local registry. So we would be adding a historical landmark to our inventory. And it's just a matter of going through the application process. So that's probably going to be coming down the pipeline in the future. So just to wrap up with our next steps here, does any commissioners have updates at this point on anything? Anyone? All right, hearing none. BCC appointments, I said this at the beginning I think when we started recording. But we do have 2 openings right now, and that is noticed out through the city manager's office for calls for applicants. So we'll see what we get on this round. I believe that's closing in February at this point. So yeah, we'll see if we get any. I think on the last one, we did not have any applicants to fill the 1 role that we had, but now we have 2. So we'll be hoping to get at least 2 applicants this time to round us out back to 9. But that's all at this time, barring any other comments. updates, concerns, anything like that, we can adjourn. And I'll be getting out a meeting invite for next week, and we can have some further discussions on the work plan.
Cool.
Good, everyone good?
Sounds good.
All right. Thank you,
Did you
Terrence.
decide,
Thank you.
did you decide, when this meeting will be next week? Or are you gonna send an email out on that?
Yeah, I'll send an email out. I'll take a look at my availability and see what the best day will be. And coordinate with anybody else. I'll just send out an email or maybe even a poll to see when we all have availability, and I can get that scheduled.
Great.
Cool. All right, thank you all. Have a nice night and
you.
see you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
So long, farewell.
Avitas and goodbye.